So at this point, this is the recommended budget, number one. It says the superintendent's recommended budget, but I can tell you that the work has been put in by the district office, senior staff, administration, and I can't thank Assistant Superintendent Dainty, who's up here handing out some information for all of her work. And I will say that this is not a doom and gloom presentation. We've all heard of the unfortunate circumstances that are existing in some school districts throughout New York State. They're talking about crippling budget cuts that is going to cut staffing, it's going to cut programs, and it's going to cut services. We were very fortunate in that our allocation from the governor's office was very, very positive. In addition to that, through careful planning over the last 3 years, when we received monies, this district took the opportunity to move slowly, to evaluate our services, to evaluate our programs, and do an inventory of what we do as a school district and determine where that money should go moving forward. So that all relates to the presentation that I'm going to give today. There are no cuts in this budget. There are adds in this budget, and we'll talk about how we got there through this presentation. The members that are up here of our Board of Education, President John Lumia, Vice President John S. Morgan, Trustee Marie Johnson, Trustee Keith Odoms, Trustee Peggy Callan, Trustee Eddie Sloshower, Trustee Michael McFarland, Trustee James Spencer, Trustee Cheryl McGitz. Without you, this would not be possible. And without your support and trust over the last couple of years, we would not be in the situation that we would be in to present a budget such as this during this time. And I thank each of you for that. Members of the senior team, invaluable. Assistant Superintendent for Administration Information Systems, Mr. Darren Olkema. Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Michelle Cardwell. We all know Ms. Kristen Dainty, the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Business Development. She is the financial guru. Richard Zip, the Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services. Renee Harris, Executive Director, Human Resources. Julia Montoya, Executive Director of Special Education. And our Director of Facilities, Ron Broas. And of course, the District Clerk and Secretary to the Superintendent, Ms. Alberta Pedro. So thank you all for all of your work in preparing what I believe is a sound proposed budget. So, how did we come up with this budget? What's in there? Well, we have district core mission and district core values. We have input, and yes, I have received a lot of input from our community, and I appreciate all of it. The values and goals of this Board of Education and the values and goals of the senior staff and all of our staff in our buildings. The 24-25 budget, in my opinion, is student-centered and it's fiscally responsible. It maintains current programs, continuing to support academics, special education, E&L, enrichment, extracurriculars, and that important professional development for staff. We continue that focus on mental health and safety for our students and staff. We increase our supports. Today's students looking at tomorrow's opportunities, which in this region, many are in the areas of career and technical education. I sent out a memo a month ago because we had disruptions at 3 schools because we had issues with our infrastructure. First of all, I would like to thank our Facilities and Operations Department for addressing them. But I think many of you understand that with having some parts that are original to the life of the school leads us to situations where at times things don't work as we want. We need to make those repairs And $2 million of our fund balance, which I will share later, that I will be asking the board that I shared, will be used to make those safety repairs. The fact that we have to close in the morning an hour and a half before school because we have an issue is unacceptable. The fact that we have to dismiss a school because of a septic issue during the school day is unacceptable. The fact that we have issues with a gas line at a school, fortunately, it wasn't anything to be concerned about, but it's unacceptable and we need to fix it. This budget does that. Also, April the 1st is the budget deadline for aid finalization, and I would be very surprised based on what I've heard if that budget is approved on April 1st, but we shall see. So, the 24-25 budget, we continue to lead the way in instruction. Career and technical programs, college readiness, added support. We talked briefly about the P-TECH program, which will be years 1 and 2 here in this building at Roy C. Ketchum High School, and years 3 and 4 at Dutchess Community College in Fishkill. This will be open to 50 individuals throughout all 13 component school districts in Dutchess County. They will take coursework at Ketchum for 2 years. They will go to DCC their junior and senior years. They will graduate with an associate's degree and an employment opportunity that we expect to pay somewhere between $70,000 to $80,000 a year. We've also used Passport for Good, which is an online database to track all of the students that are involved in extracurricular activities, and it records their coursework for graduation pathways and college applications. So we've streamlined the process to make it more user-friendly. We continue the Winter Circle project at Roy C. Ketchum High School and at John Jay High School. We've added additional academic enrichment programs at the elementary level. We've increased the budget for the number of opportunities offered at the Duchess Bosse's Career and Technical Institute. We've added a school counselor for career and technical pathways. So that's our instruction. Let's talk about special education. It's been a common theme over the last couple of years. It continues to be a common theme. Why? I know nobody wants to talk about the pandemic, but the bottom line is we are seeing students who require additional services, whether it was a result of the pandemic or something else, we're not sure, but they need additional services, and it's our responsibility to provide them with that. So what we've come up with is a new initiative. It's called the ICT Plus. So you've heard of ICT, you've heard of self-contained. Now we're going to try to find something that's between ICT and self-contained, and that's ICT Plus. So that's integrated co-taught programs. It is a new class for students with emotional behavioral challenges that interfere with their success in a classroom with a 6-to-1 ratio. We will add 3 additional special education teachers to support the program. An additional ICT special education teacher or 2 could be added pending completion of the annual review process. So this is still in motion, but I can tell you that if a student requires certain services in ICT Plus, that's where they need to go, and we need to have a seat at the table for them so that they can achieve their highest potential. Out-of-district programs. We send a number of students out of district for special education services. Our costs in special education out-of-district services has gone up over $2 million over the last 2 years. That's a lot of money. We provide the transportation, the placements. Why don't we do it here in Wappinger Central Schools? We're moving in that direction, but it's going to take some time. It has been communicated to me numerous times that students and parents and families that live in this district want their students to go to school in this district. Why can't we make it happen? I believe if we invest in these types of classes, in the long run, it's going to save us money and it's going to keep our kids in district. We continue to increase our collaboration with local, state, and private educational institutions to support our special education students. We work with community-based organizations. We work with the county. I'm going to share with you a grant that we received from New York State, also in this area shortly. But before I get to the grant, every time I send out a correspondence, it always says, the top priority of this school district is the safety and security of our students and staff. And if we're going to say it, we better do it. As you know, all 10 of our elementary school buildings will continue to have a law enforcement officer present from their respective municipality during portions of the school day. School resource officers from the Dutchess County Sheriff's Department will continue to be assigned to Wappingers Junior High School and Royce C. Ketchum High School, while officers from the East Fishkill Police Department will continue to be assigned to Van Wyck Junior High School and John Jay High School throughout the entire school day. In addition to that, we're adding school safety officers at both Royce C. Ketchum and John Jay High School. Infrastructure. I spoke about it briefly. The district, as I mentioned, plans to utilize our fund balance to address infrastructure requests from our Capital Improvement Committee, as well as our building and district administrators, not to exceed $2 million. Let's do it right the first time, and let's fix things that are 30 to 40 years old. Examples of some of the repairs: heating, septic, and other essential repairs throughout the district. Also, safety improvements for buildings, ground, and athletic fields as needed. As I mentioned, we were fortunate enough to receive a grant from Governor Hochul's office, and I can't thank her enough for having the faith in this district to continue our commitment to student mental health and wellness. New York State gave us $2.5 million, which was the 6th highest award in all of New York State for these types of practices and programs. Why? Over the past 2 years, we've added, as you know, 12 mental health professionals. We've made it a priority. It continues to be a priority, and now we have additional resources to expand what we already have in place. It improves the ability of staff and students to identify the mental health concerns and increase help-seeking behaviors. And that's the thing that I would like to make very, very clear. Much of what we talk about is proactive. If you're proactive and you're doing what you need to do to be proactive, that in turn generally leads you to have to be less reactive. So by having these individuals in the schools, by having the police officers in the schools, by having the mental health professionals in the schools, by having the behavioral specialists in the schools, school psychologists, they're there. They know these kids. They see if they come in. And if they're acting a little off, they'll have a conversation with them. And then they'll make the proper referral to an administrative office or to a guidance office, or they'll be provided with some assistance so that we'll find out, hopefully, what the issue is. And before it has the ability to exacerbate, we remedy it. It's been extremely successful. As I stated, the health, welfare, safety, students, and staff remains our top priority. Grant money will be used to hire additional school psychologists and social workers. And again, the theme of this budget is maximizing resources to benefit our schools and our community. Let's talk about the tax levy and New York State aid. The Consumer Price Index, as of a week ago, was 4.12%. Since the Consumer Price Index exceeds 2%, the district will utilize 2% in the tax cap formula. It's important to recognize that when you do the tax cap calculation, that equals to a tax levy increase of a maximum of 4.33%. In my opinion, that's a little too steep. You are aware that the last 3 years, this district has come in under the tax cap. Yet we continue to have money to continue to support program and add program due to careful financial planning and very, very strategic deployment of finances. So my recommendation to the board is that we don't go to 4.33%, but we actually decrease the levy from 4.33 to 3.26, which is a decrease of 1.07%. We're currently using the New York State Governor's executive budget proposal, which includes the continuation of foundation aid formula and the universal pre-K funding. Fiscal responsibility. I've stood here before the past few years, and I said that we need to deliver on a budget that provides our students with the programs and services that they need to be successful and is fiscally responsible. I'm happy to stand here again in my estimation because I believe that's exactly what we're doing. Budgets have never pierced the tax cap in this district. And for the third consecutive year, this budget recommendation will be below the allowable tax cap, as I mentioned, by 1.07%. Let's take a look at the past. 2021, 3.64 allowable tax cap, 3.64 budget increase. 21-22, 2.49 allowable tax cap, 2.49 budget increase. 22-23, 1.38% tax cap. The tax levy came in less for the first time since the inception of the tax cap in the school district back in 2010 at 0.83%. The following year, the tax cap was 2.05. The district again came in under at 1.67. This year, we're a little higher than I think we'd all like to be, but I don't know about you. Everything costs me more money. I think it probably does for you as well. Therefore, everything that we purchase as a school district costs us more money, which leads to that number being what it is. Let's take a look at the tax levy. Last year, the tax levy was $184 million approximately. This year, it's going to go to $190. So that's a change of $6 million from last year to this year. 3.26% change. Total budget. Last year, $287 million. This year, $305 million. But understand, that's not all going to be on the taxpayer. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. That's a budget-to-budget change of 6.45%. Grants from fund balance and state aid will be 3.2%. And as I mentioned, this budget will not be the sole responsibility of the taxpayer. Why? Because we've taken the resources that we've received, we've evaluated and analyzed all of our systems, and now we're beginning to spend some of that money in areas that we agree upon within our community are our priorities. So 24-25 budget, tax levy versus total increase, and this is important. So a 6.45 budget-to-budget increase means what to the taxpayer? It means that the taxpayer is only impacted by 3.26%, which I mentioned before is below the cap by 1.07%. How do we maximize our resources? This proposed budget provides program supports and opportunities for all students and staff. But as I mentioned, it's not the sole responsibility of the taxpayer. And how does that happen? The balance of funding will come from state aid, grant sources, which include that $2.5 million from the governor's office, and the utilization of $8.4 million of fund balance. That's money that we have received over the last couple of years that we have held and done our due diligence to find out and determine where that money should be spent, as opposed to saying the money's here, we got to spend it. Can't do that. So we analyzed our entire system, and we came up with $8.4 million. Now I'm going to ask you a question, Ms. Crandall. So if we use $8.4 million of fund balance this year, how much fund balance will that leave us?
Approximately $18 million.
So if we spend $8 million in fund balance this year, we'll still have $18 million in fund balance. We can't spend it all at once. We've seen what's going on in other school districts. We've seen the economic climate. My hope is that this money will help us maintain the programs and services that are so dear to us through the difficult financial times that are certainly on the way. That's my hope, and that's my plan. And if that doesn't happen, and I need to stand up here in a couple of years as a superintendent to tell you that we need to cut programs and services, I will do that. Hopefully that won't happen. But I'm not going to be paralyzed to a point where I'm not going to add what we need because I have a concern that we can't fund it 3 years down the road. What message does that send to the kids that are currently going through our schools? What does it send to our kids that are in their sophomore or junior year in our high schools? What message does that send? They deserve what we're able to provide at this time. And then we'll see what happens down the road. The areas, again, of priority: mental health and safety, special education, building infrastructure, career and technical education. In summary, I believe that the budget that we collectively worked on is student-centered, it's fiscally responsible. It hits in the areas of education, safety, mental health, enrichment, special education, and the contracted increases that needed to happen because our employees are what make us successful. And they have worked extremely diligently, as everyone has, especially over the past couple of years. The video went out on the 7th of November. Presentation was done on the 12th of February. Another video went out on the 26th. This is the superintendent recommended budget. Next week, maybe some more budget conversation. On the 8th of April, there will be the recommended budget 2, and hopefully we'll have an update on state aid, although I'm not optimistic. Last year, I think we found out in the middle of April. From what I understand, it looks that way. This year, there seems to be a lot of discussion. And I can't thank the governor as well as our state representatives here in our school district for all of their support. They have been extremely supportive of education, and it's greatly appreciated. I would hope that by the 23rd of April, we could present a budget to be approved and adopted by the Board of Education. I expect that to happen. We'll have a community forum and a budget presentation on the 6th. The 13th, community forum, that's a state-mandated public hearing on the budget. And then the budget vote is May the 21st, 2024. Next steps, continue to send those questions, comments, and concerns to budget@wcsdny.org. Presentations and reports will continue to be posted to the Board of Education website. We've got a spot for frequently asked questions. We continue to provide educational updates. Presentations will continue to occur throughout our community and some of the local town board meetings. We continue to advocate to maintain funding from New York State, and that will continue. People need to understand that Wappingers is there, and we're going to fight for the money that we believe that our communities and our students deserve. And continue working, as I stated before, to maintain a safe learning environment for our students and staff. Because if they don't have that, they are not going to reach their highest potential. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bunk. Are there any questions at all at this time? Eddie?
Just some observations, and Ms. Crandall and Dr. Bunk can correct me if I'm wrong, just for the board. Obviously, you see $18 million and you're like, oh my God. But if you really go through this, just in terms of a quick breakdown that I went through, obviously the needs of transportation that we've talked about many, many times, and I'm sure Dr. Bunk will address that, or Ms. Crandall will in the next presentation. But with what we need to do to help transporting students, we keep talking about, we want our students to be transported by not outside vendors. So there is a $3 million increase in transportation, obviously to cover the runs and so forth. And obviously I'll let Ms. Crandall and Dr. Bach explain that a little bit more. Also, everyone to keep in mind, we keep bringing up our conversations with what's going on with special ed. And if you go through the numbers, you see there's a significant increase based on the presentation, which is roughly about a $7 million increase just in the special ed budget itself. Well, bless you. Also keep in mind, because of all the work that we've done in terms of debt service, we do have an increase in debt service of about $3 million. So right there, under those three items, it's about $13 million of the $18 million increase. Obviously, if you go through it, naturally, the other $5 million is just going to be yearly contractual obligations that go up that we really don't have any control over, working with our collective bargaining units, as well as our vendors and outside sources. So that's really the major components of that $18 million increase. So although you see this ridiculous, number, just to kind of understand where it's coming from and what it's all about, obviously this addresses two major needs of the district: transportation and the increase in our special education services. And Mr. Zip can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're close to about 2,000 special ed students, and that seems to be increasing at the lower levels. And now that we've 450 to 500 UPK students, and obviously we're going to have we have a significant percentage of special ed needs for those kids that are coming into kindergarten. So those services, we want to keep all of them within the district, and just the community needs to realize that there is a cost for doing those things. So just that was my quick overview of everything. Obviously, we'll be breaking this down a little bit more detail and fine tuning everything as best as we can. But my understanding is that's really where that additional $18 million, why we have that increase. So hopefully I looked at all of that correctly.
You are correct, Trustee Sloshower. Well done.
Are there any other questions? John?
Dr. Bonk, you asked Assistant Superintendent Dainty about the fund balance and said that we're going to spend about $8 million of the fund balance, and the amount remaining you said was approximately
18 billion total. Total fund balance.
Okay. And then what percentage is that, and how does the percentage that we'll have remaining compare to the state controller's guidelines, which I will add, if Tom DiNapoli happens to be tuned in or in the audience and I don't see him out there, it's a ridiculously low percentage when compared to municipalities, but I don't want to get going on that. But what's the percentage?
No, feel free, Vice President.
I'm trying to get my question answered. So what percentage is that?
Sure. So the district is allowed to have $4 million of the budget, incoming budget. So barring any other changes, et cetera, we'd be at about approximately 5.83%. So we would still be in excess of the 4% allowable. Again, we write a corrective action plan at the end of every audit, and we addressed, with the board's approval, those items and areas that we would be looking to utilize that fund balance in a smart fashion in order to be able to maximize the programs of the district.
So when we say fund balance, we're really talking about what some of our taxpayers, I know in my household, we talk about an emergency fund or a rainy day fund, whatever you want to call it. So we're spending down some of that, but we're still going to be above what the state controller, who's elected, what his guidance is.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bonk, you made a comment that you were not optimistic regarding the budget, and I just want to clarify what your sentiment was. I believe that you meant that to convey that you don't think the budget is going to come in a timely,
That's correct.
and in a delayed fashion. Yeah. Not that you're pessimistic about the budget.
And quite frankly, no, I'm pessimistic that it's going to come in on time, but my feeling is that we're probably going to receive additional funding above this. To what degree, I don't know that. The information that I'm getting, and there's been a lot of advocacy work that I've been involved in, along with members of our Board of Education in Albany, meeting with our state elected officials and other state officials. We're concerned about the future. Fortunately, this year we seem to be okay. Unfortunately, I can't say that for many of my colleagues throughout the state who are looking at catastrophic cuts. What I would say is exactly what you stated before, that the reason that we're not in that situation is because of our reserves and our fund balance. So as I've stated before, I don't want to spend money for the sake of spending money. If the district gets cited for having too much money, yet is still able to come underneath the tax cap for the third consecutive year to continue to have the types of programs that we all love and expect and that our students deserve, I don't have a problem doing that.
So if you need to get lunch detention for being a little over that guideline, you're willing to serve it.
That's correct.
Okay.
It wouldn't be the first time, and it probably won't be the last time.
One final question just on state aid. Or actually, it's not a question, but a comment. So I would certainly hope that we get more, but that's in all our roles up here, all we can do is hope. And we don't have any direct control of that. But just speaking for myself, I would be very encouraged if we did get any additional monies, if the bottom line stayed at 305 million and we were able to get more state aid. I think that would be a win-win for all of our Wappinger Central School District community to be able to deliver the services and lower the tax levy increase even more. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment, Marie?
Just one, Ms. Dainty, I apologize. I didn't recognize you. Confused me.
Marie?
Yes, I'd just like to point out when we talk about the state aid, we have to remember that Wappingers is one of the few districts in our county that didn't lose the students. Some of our sister districts in Dutchess County are getting hit tremendously with a loss in their state aid because they had such a mass exodus of students in their districts. And it is actually going to be kind of devastating for several of our districts, where it's going to, when they have a $30 million budget because they have 600 students and they're going to lose $1 million, that can become very catastrophic for some of these districts. So right now, even if we stay level where we're at on the state aid that they projected, I think we should count our blessings, because right now we're one of the few that's actually maintaining, if getting a little bit more than what we did last year.
I apologize if it seems like I'm monopolizing the conversation, but I'll proceed anyway. A majority of the Dutchess County school districts had their state aid reduced from last school year to this school year. We are in the very happy minority to have had that number go up. But that said, if there's a chance for us to get more, I think we're happy to take it on behalf of our taxpayers.
I'm glad many of you guys went to Albany to try to get some more money. So thank you to everybody who went up there, and I hope you keep going. And with that being said, the next topic is the vehicle replacement plan. Ms. Dainty.
Thank you so much. Please
Ms.
explain.
Dainty?
Yes, sir.
Would you prefer that I did the presentation?
No, I'm okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'll speak louder into the microphone. I promise.
Okay, Ms. Dainty, go right ahead.
Thank you. I'll speak up, I promise. And it is just a cold, everybody. So this evening, we will be looking to discuss the 24-25 transportation proposition. This is a vehicle replacement plan as well as a vehicle addition plan based on some of the information that we have been able to gather over the past few school years. Again, we thank everybody this evening for giving us the opportunity to have this discussion. As we've shared previously, we are the largest district-owned fleet in New York State. We have 86 vans. Those are 20 to 26 passenger vehicles. We would have 155 large vehicles that are a maximum of 72 capacity. We have 8 vans that are wheelchair accessible and 4 Suburbans. As part of this vehicle replacement plan, we have several factors that we consider from year to year. Of course, the first and foremost is the safe transportation to and from school for our students. We have to be mindful of those DOT requirements that we must adhere to, and also the staffing that we continue to encounter challenges around. And as we continue to train in our own program, which we're very proud of, several, I believe, are on the agenda this evening for approval, and we're very happy about that. That is something we put a lot of time and energy into, homegrown bus drivers, and we're very happy to have them as an addition to the district and to our WFW union. We also have fiscal diligence that we are mindful of. We're looking to keep those maintenance costs stable. As a vehicle gets older, it costs more to repair, and therefore we're mindful of that when we look at our inventory as to what vehicles are ready to retire. We continue to have shifting enrollment and evolving student needs. As we have just discussed, the needs of our students continues to increase. The number of our students who require additional supports, whether it be in the classroom or on a school vehicle, continues to rise, and we have to be mindful of that as well. We also have to have stable expenditures with regard to our budget, fiscal responsibility, and the electric bus conversation still does exist. However, at this point in time, based on the evaluation that the district continues to work on and the information that we have received, it is not gone from the table by any means, but just not something that is included in this replacement plan. What are we asking for? We are looking to retire 8 large vehicles that have average mileage of about 119,000 miles, and they are from the model year 2013. They have extensive body wear issues and concerns, but going back to that fiscal stability as well as that safety piece, and the cost benefit analysis just isn't there for those vehicles. We are looking to add 15 additional vehicles, so we are growing our fleet. This is not something that we have done over the last several years, but due to the needs of the district, we are looking to add vehicles. They would be vans, because we need to meet the shifting enrollment as well as meet the needs of our students with special needs. What does this look like on the proposition? It is, as you can see, 8 71-passenger vehicles and 28 passenger vans would be 15 of those for a total of $2.6 million. We will continue to utilize the 5-year revolving bond anticipation note to purchase these vehicles. This provides for a pretty stable budgetary line, and it is part of the tax cap calculation when you look at the capital levy, which is an exclusion as part of that 7-step calculation.
Ms. Dainty?
Yes, sir.
If I could just interject briefly, I know that you mentioned this, but I want to make the point that if you notice, the passenger buses are diesel and the passenger vans are gasoline. They are not electric. So I just want to make that distinction. I think it's important. Where that goes, we're not sure, but we're not ready at this point to be continued. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that clarification. So based on the addition of the vehicles to the prop, looking at 23 vehicles, we're looking at about an increase in a budgetary line of $3,276, which actually doesn't hit until next school year because the bus proposition is done after this school year. But again, that's kind of where we are with regard to budgetary change for the bus prop. It's a pretty simple presentation, and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dainty, and feel better. President Lumia?
Just a quick question, Christian. Assume we had enough bus drivers.
Yes, sir.
Will adding additional vehicles enable us to no longer use orange?
Well, the district did go out to a proposal for contracted bus transportation. Adding these vehicles will help to allow us to bring the special ed routes that have been contracted for well before I even came here back in district. That is the goal. Have the vehicles in order to be able to run the routes, have the drivers to be able to run the routes all in district. That is our goal. So we're not there yet, but we're getting pretty close. Last year it was 23, I think we were at, that we needed to get that balance. This year, by adding 15, we're not retiring any of those vans. We're actually increasing our fleet. We should be closer to that number. It all depends on what additional needs come in and how many drivers we are able to either hire or train in the coming months.
So President Lumia, if I can just interject, as I mentioned multiple times last year, it's the same mantra. We want our students to be driven to and from school by our employees. We will continue to work in that effort and make the necessary changes as quickly and as fiscally responsibly as we possibly can. It's that important.
Okay, Cheryl.
Okay, I have two questions. The first one is if we are not retiring any vans this year and just increasing, is our van fleet safe enough that there are no vehicles that we have to retire?
Absolutely. We would not have any vehicles, first of all, that wouldn't pass the DOT regulation. We wouldn't be allowed to put them on the road. Secondly, it's not best case scenario. The vans are different than the large buses. The large buses don't travel as far and they have a longer life from their model year, where the vans are mostly out of district or running around inside the district for out of feeder type situations. They have a shorter lifespan model year, and that's how they gain their mileage. So we feel that we are going to be okay. Director Broas works with the transportation garage to make sure. And then next year we will reevaluate. That's the beauty of being able to have this conversation annually, and we will go from there.
And my other question is, if the bus proposition were not to pass, we would most likely then have to continue contracting some of these out-of-district routes to contractors. And from going through the budget line item by line item with another trustee today, it looks as though it would cost us substantially more in the budget to contract out those routes than to purchase the new vehicles and try to keep them in district.
Correct. So just to be clear, there still will be contracted routes in the 24-25 budget. However, you are correct. If we don't have the vehicles and
The only way that we would be able to avoid that would be to purchase somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 35 to 50 buses. I don't think that's prudent to do at this point. I would like to eventually get to where we need to get. I don't want to put ourselves in a bind. I think with the driver training programs that we have in-house, some of the adjustments that have been made in salaries that were much needed for our bus drivers, I think is going to help. And we will continue to tweak the system to make sure that the bus routes are as effective and efficient as possible. I don't want to go out there and buy 40 or 45 buses and then have them and not be able to operate them because we didn't have enough time to plan and make it effective and efficient.
Yes, I understand.
That's my,
And I understand that and see
Yeah.
where you're going. But when I hear people out in the community who say, oh, well, the bus proposition is higher this year because we're buying more buses, I don't want to spend that money. I want to make sure that they are informed voters and know that it's going to be more of an impact for transportation on the budget if we don't pass the bus proposition, which means that those funds that will be needed for the additional contracted routes will come out of other programs that benefit our students.
you are absolutely correct. And what that also will mean is that if we don't replace the 8 buses and add the 15 vans, we're going to have to subcontract another 23 routes out that we wouldn't have to in the event the proposition passed, which would cost more money. And again, it would be defeating the goal of bringing the transportation in-house. So you're absolutely right. Thank you.